I just want to say hello and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michaela Taranis, and I am a Special Collections Librarian at Augustana College's Treadway Library. In Special Collections, we primarily preserve and provide access to the college's collection of distinctive and unique books, the college archives, ephemera, and photographs. These materials relate both to the campus and local area, and they are open to individuals at Augustana and within the community for research, engagement, and learning. It is through this work in Special Collections that I encountered the poetry and service of Dr. Haki R. Madhubuti, a key literary figure for over 50 years. I am excited for you to hear more about his experience today as a poet, publisher, and advocate. I want to thank Augustana's Treadway Library, the Humanities Fund, Rivermont Collegiate, and the Rare Book School's MC Lang Fellowship for supporting this event and conversation. I also want to thank Aubrey Barnes, tonight's main moderator, for his participation and guidance in organizing this event. Now I am pleased to introduce to you our guests. Dr. Haki R. Madhubuti was once described in an article as the most influential Black poet, writer, publisher, educator, and institution builder that you've probably never heard of. However, soon you will. He is a leading figure in Black literature and an architect of the Black arts movement. He is a pivotal writer of over 37 creative writing and nonfiction publications, some under his former name, Don L. Lee. His poetries and essays are also available in over 100 anthologies. Madhubuti's first 4 Black arts poetry books, Think Black, Black Pride, Don't Cry, Scream, and We Walk the Way of the New World, sold over 140,000 copies between 1967 and 1971, making him one of the best-selling poets in the United States and world. His 1991 book, Black Men, Obsolete, Single, Dangerous, The African American Family in Transition, has more than 1 million copies in print. His most recent book, Taught by Women, Poems as Resistance Language, New and Selected, honors the many women who influenced his life. Among his many honors, he is recipient of the American Book Award, the Illinois Arts Council Award, the Pegasus Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Hurston Wright Legacy Prize. Madhubuti is widely known as a publisher and the founder of Chicago's Third World Press, the oldest and largest Black-owned publishing house in the United States. In 2015, the press expanded its mission as Third World Press Foundation, a nonprofit literacy program that provides support and resources to underserved communities. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for the event, Aubrey Barnes. Aubrey Barnes, also known as Aubs, is a poet, spoken word artist, battle rap enthusiast, author, and educator. His self-published books of poetry include Unfin, I'm Not Anti-Love, I Swear, and It Is Good, It Is Written. He is the founder of More in Rhetoric, a poetry showcase that highlights both local and regional artists. Barnes also founded the Young Lions War Project, an organization that guides young poets in writing, discussing, and performing poetry in a safe space. For his continued efforts within the community, the City of Rock Island named him the Individual Awardee for Citizen of the Year in 2023. He is also the recipient of the Quad Cities Regional Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Awards. In addition to teaching and directing, Aubrey Barnes is also the co-founder and the host of Black Thoughts podcast. Please join me in thanking these 2 wonderful guests. Before we get started, we are going to have a student from Young Lions War, Zakaya Dade, will be joining us, and she will be performing a piece titled Remember.
Let's talk about how we came up from nothing, from being beaten and bruised because you were scared of a skin tone. Wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for my ancestors. Didn't walk through a pile of nails, blood, sweat, and tears, hearing the scream of their loved ones with the sound of a whip. I said, hearing the scream of their loved ones with the sound of a whip. Being led through the Underground Railroad in 1810, saving lives of the color and escaping the hands of a white man. I said, remember Harriet Tubman. Cut, scar wounds, our battle wounds. How long did it take you to realize that hatred was the only thing breaking our society? Listening to the words, I have a dream, isn't moving you. I said, I have a dream one day. I said, remember Martin Luther King. I will not move from my seat. I said, I will not move from my seat December 1st, 1955. Because of my tone, I am what you call different, because you want to separate me from your kind. I said, remember Rosa Parks. Hold me down like I have chains that are visible to you, I mean the white folks. I have skin that is scary to you, I mean the white folks. I said, remember me. Dying at the age of 14, 1955 because you were threatened by a young boy's whistle. Shooting his body drops, tossing his body in the river like he's some type of trash you never want to see. I said, remember Emmett Till. I said, remember the days I rose above all standards, working hard as a NASA engineer. I said, remember Morgan Watson. The people before me, the ones we honor with our pride, our culture, our excellence. I said, remember Black Power.
All right, I'd be remiss if we didn't give another round of applause for Zakiya. So she actually came with the posse. Like there's a lot of amazing poets too who are part of our program. So definitely thank them and talk to them after this. But I thank y'all for coming to this event, to being a part of this conversation, and I hope that you leave with a lot of information that benefits you in your life and all that. And I thank you, Professor Madhubuti, for just coming to this. Being somebody who's a poet, an educator himself, and just researching your work, this is definitely a great privilege for me. So I appreciate you for making the time to come to the Quad Cities and giving your time, knowledge, and all that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank Peter Rulich first. Peter, stand away here.
Thank you.
I've been knowing Peter for, I guess, about 25 years now, maybe longer than that. But his father was a minister of the gospel and served in many spheres, but one of his father's last posts was in Japan. And Peter sent him a copy of one of my books, which was Claim and Earth, this book. And after his father passed, Peter sent the book to me, and just about every page was marked up with questions. And of course, I felt rather badly because I didn't have a chance to answer the questions. But anytime someone takes their time to read your work, and to question your ideas, and as most of you all know, ideas and the creators of ideas run the world. And we all tap dance to somebody's ideas. If you're a Christian, that's an idea. If you're Muslim, that's an idea. If you're Hindu, that's an idea. If you're Buddhist, that's an idea. If you're Democrat, Republican, those are ideas. In fact, if you remember the Sugar Hill Gang, that's an idea. Ideas are power. And I'm here with this young brother, Aubrey, because he represents our future. And I'm very serious about that because it's on you now. About less than 3 weeks ago, I turned 82 years old. So I and my wife of over 50 years, and our children, the brothers and sisters I grew up with, we've been in this battle. I ended up in the military at 18 years old, which is the poor boy's answer to unemployment. And only made it out of the military because of a black sergeant who rescued me because I was in the brig, they were taking me out of the brig, getting ready to give me a dishonorable discharge. But this black sergeant said, let me handle it. And he saved me, so I got able to get an honorable discharge from the United States Army and used the GI Bill of Rights to go to school. And went on and got graduate degrees and everything like that. But the prerequisite for this kind of struggle for me and for us, for people of goodwill, especially in this country, you have to do something that is almost miraculous, and that is love black people. Without reservation, love black people. We did not come here first class, American Airlines. We didn't walk on water to get here. Our people snatched us from the continent, dropped us in the Western Hemisphere to work the land and to make billions of dollars for them. And somehow we're supposed to be grateful for working for other people all of our lives. And so I ended up being raised on the Lower East Side, Detroit, Michigan, West Side, Chicago. Basically, I was reared among pimps and hoes slamming Cadillac doors. My mother, who was one of the most beautiful women in the world, ended up in the slave trade, sex trade. It was dead at the age of 34. She was dead. My sister was a year and a half younger than I. Had her first child at 14, second child at 16, third child at 18. By the time she was 27, she had 6 children, 5 different fathers. You don't know what poverty is until you're wearing used underwear. So this whole question around poverty and white supremacy, the capitalism, why we're here at this time and why we are here at this very beautiful opening college, Lutheran college, is that you come to tell the truth at a time when people are killing the truth. And sometimes that's very difficult to do.
Absolutely.
But it's on you now.
Absolutely.
It's on these young poets now. You see, it's on you all. But you got to prepare yourself. Empirical truth requires research, requires conversation, requires work and study, and requires you to define very early what your mission is. Okay. And we gave you, most of you received, hopefully, this catalog and brochure. And in the first part of the catalog are the books we published over the last 56 years, and the new books that are coming out and so forth. But the last 2 pages, 3 pages, represent our school. Pastor, we run 3 schools in Chicago. 2 K through 8 and 1 preschool. And we're servicing over 700 children a day in an African-centered education. And the reason I'm bringing that up, and I'll just say a few more words and I'll take your questions, because all too often, people do not think you're doing anything just because you're a poet. But everything that we have created in Chicago is because I'm a poet. In terms of the publishing company, in terms of schools. I taught in the academy for 42 years. I started teaching at the college level when I was 28 years old at Columbia College in Chicago. And ended my 42 years at DePaul University in Chicago. And so I'm one of the few men that you will meet. I've been to 4 continents. I read in many nations. Been to Africa about 15 times. Was able to sit and talk with 4 presidents. And I'll just end with this in terms of my monologue opening up. I'm here because of men like El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X. A man and a woman like Margaret and Charlie Burroughs of Chicago, who founded the DuSable Museum in Chicago, which is the first museum in the nation, black museum in the nation. I'm here because of a man by the name of Dudley Randall, who founded Broadside Press in Detroit, Michigan, which is the first black poetry press in the country in 1962. I'm here because of a man by the name of Hoyt, H-O-Y-T, W. Fuller, who was the managing editor of Negro Digest Black World Magazine. And Black World Magazine was a major vehicle that chronicled the whole black arts movement and other movements coming out of the 60s and 70s. I'm here because of Dr. Barbara Ann Sizemore, who was one of the major educators in the world. She was the first black superintendent of the Washington, D.C. school system. She didn't last long because they just got rid of her in terms of not letting her do her work. And she ended up basically as the dean of School of Education at DePaul University in Chicago. I'm here because of the first black poet writer to win the Pulitzer Prize in poetry. Professor, doctor, superior poet, Gwendolyn Brooks. And she adopted me when I was about 28. And we published all of her works at Third World Press. Because my commitment to Ms. Brooks, to Professor Brooks, to Dr. Brooks, was that we would not let any of her books go out of print. Why? We own the press. It's ours.
Yeah.
And if you look at the first part of the catalog, that building there, that's our headquarters. We own a half a block in Chicago. We're not leasing it. We're not begging people for anything. The money that Augustana pays me goes to the press. And so, and we're 501c3. So if you want to help us, buy books. And I'll just end with this right quick. We all do what we've been taught to do. And that is the problem. That is the problem. And what we and I dedicate myself to, most certainly my wife, and you can look my wife up. My wife, her birth name is Dr. Carol D. Lee, L-double-E. My wife had an undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois at 20 years old. She had a master's degree from the University of Chicago at 21 years old. We started these institutions. We married, we have 3 children. All our children are university graduates, 2 engineers, an educator. She went back to school to work on a PhD. She applied at Northwestern, she applied at Chicago, and she applied at Illinois. They all accepted her. She decided to go back to Chicago and get a PhD because she felt this, and we knew this. If she got a PhD from the University of Chicago, she don't need no damn references. And she did it in 3 years. Dissertation in hand. And as she was walking off the stage, representatives from Northwestern University there asking her would she come work at Northwestern, what she did for over 27 years. And when she left, which they didn't want her to leave, the president of the university came to Dr. Lee's one-day seminar on her work and basically told the audience, I'm here to tell Dr. Lee that we're giving her, and she knows this because she's earned it, a 1-year sabbatical. You know, so you with us at least for another year to do whatever you want to do. Okay? My wife now is the president of the National Education Academy, National Academy of Education. The National Academy of Education only brings 200 educators in, okay? And so if it's filled up with 200 educators, it's a national body. You can't get in. So if it loses, then you bring new people in. She is also on President Biden's National Commission on Education. And they respected my wife so much, they voted to make her the chair. All right? She's pretty bad. All right? Yeah. But you know what? I'm not no shortstop. And the key thing here, and I asked Peter to give you the one-page biography of me. You don't know me, for the most part. Some of you may have heard of me and so forth. I doubt that. But as my birth name was Donnell Lee. And as Donnell Lee, I was the best-selling poet in the United States. My first 3 books sold 160,000 copies. My third book sold 75,000 copies. Published by a black publisher. Right? I'm going to stop there because it gets to be too personal. But the point I'm trying to make always is you have to have a vision, a mission, and some understanding how the world works in order to function in the world. If you do not have that, the world's going to function on you. Okay? Okay.
No, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. There are a couple things you said that I really resonated with that kind of lead us to my next question, but just what you said about poetry, how like people just see poetry. Like they don't see poets as like having any other big function outside of just writing, you know, and just being someone who started an organization where I teach kids how to write poetry. I tell people all the time, like, it ain't just about no rhymes and metaphors. Like these kids are becoming advocates for themselves, advocates for the community, and like the fact that what you do is a testament to that. You know, you have these narratives and you have these authors that you supported, and showing that like you've had schools, like institutions in Chicago that support that. I think it's a good message to kind of show that like having the arts available to communities, especially kids, that's just a door open for the kids, but like it allows them to be advocates for themselves, to learn about the world around them in a unique way. And you saying you have 3 institutions in Chicago, correct?
4, actually
4? 4? Okay, good deal. One more than I thought. Good deal. And as someone who's an educator who got their degree in education and has worked in the education system in various roles for the last 10 years as a para, TA, junior high teacher for at-risk youth, and now 4th grade teacher, I've been in a space where like I'm not sure fully if the education space is for me, and I don't know if it's because like of being somebody who's grown up and experienced in a predominantly white space, and you have these institutions that are black-led. I'm definitely curious as to on your thoughts of like why it's important to have black-led institutions in the realm of education in the U.S. today.
Well, the same reason it's important to have Catholic institutions, Lutheran institutions, institutions that are secular. We never question why, very seldom question why the University of Chicago exists, or Harvard, or Princeton, or University of Illinois. But anytime we try to move toward developing our own institutions, somehow we're trying to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. If you don't know who you are, anybody can name you.
Yeah.
And they will.
Yep.
Willie.
Mm-hmm.
Sambo. All right. So it's very important that any people who are in control of their own cultural imperatives about the healthy replication of themselves. The healthy replication of themselves. And that replication in terms of ourselves starts with our children. And so this is why our children are given names that are culturally focused and a part of their tradition. All right. Now, just an example, well, my name is Haki Madhubuti. Haki means just to justice. And Madhubuti means precise, accurate, dependable. That's it. And so, all my adult life, I've been trying to move toward that which is good, just, correct, and right. With a sense of integrity and history. Because you don't have that history, everything else is left to other people to define for you. And so, institutions are critical. And when we have our independent black institutions, I would dare say that very few people in this room actually know who started this college. And why it still exists today. But we're fortunate that it does still exist today because we're here today. So it does not have the fear of bringing someone like me here and you interviewing me, because it's trying to move toward, I think, truth.
Absolutely.
Not fairy tales, not ghost stories, but essentially trying to understand 55 million black people, over 60 million brown people, about 20-some odd million Asian people, indigenous people who've been pretty much wiped out back on reservations. But we're not going anywhere. So if we're not going anywhere, then how do we exist together if we're not talking to each other? Yeah. All right? And if you understand anything about rural America, which is basically rural white America, are armed to the teeth. You know, you got over 300 million people in this country, but you got over 360 or 70 million weapons out here. And most of them are in rural America. Somebody might tell you that urban America is armed to the teeth, but nowhere like rural America. Okay. And so, part of stopping the war that some people want to happen, we got to talk to each other.
Absolutely.
We got to talk to each other. You see? And see that I don't have no fame, but I'm not going to let you talk at me. I'm not answering you. Right? And I feel that you should be the same thing. And so institutional structures allow us to develop, refine, study, create, and to bring into existence that which is important to us. And if indeed it is valuable, we're able to share with other people and also receive their ideas too. Okay? And that's what it is all about. So it is not for me to talk at you. It's for us to talk together and to listen to each other. Okay? That's what we're trying to do. And again, getting back to what I said earlier, that any people who are in control of their own cultural imperatives about the creation of institutional structures that reflect the best of them. And that's what we've tried to do over the last, 56 years. Yeah. Without grant money, you know what I'm saying? Without, Gates money, or these other Neanderthals who think they can buy the world. And it is very difficult. But again, it's got to be done. So where we are, and this city has a rich history in terms of what it has done in terms of farming, that's for sure. And it's not to be minimized. And you cannot minimize farmers or farming because we eat food. Okay. And what has happened all too often, most certainly in this country, is that the farmers and those who bring this food, they have been minimized. That they put the middle persons, the middle men in there, which control the flow of money. And that has hurt a great deal. Yeah. Because it's not getting back to the farmers. You find these farmers, and all too often, deeply in debt, very angry. but they're angry at the wrong people.
Yeah.
You see? And but institutions are critical and so important.
Mhm. No, I appreciate that. And I resonate with what you say, just when it comes to the hardship of like building something like the institutions that you've built. Like I know, or I could just fathom how much work and sacrifice went to building those institutions, especially when you go into a space of like not depending on the things around us and begging for money or begging for spaces and all that, and just saying you're going to build this up from the ground up. Especially being somebody who started an organization in the same way, where like I ran into like hardships with kind of like what comes with just like holding an integrity to what you're building. So out of curiosity, really, I want to know like as much as you can share, what hardships came with kind of like building these Black-led institutions?
Well, very seldom do we use the word sacrifice. And the reason we don't use sacrifice because we have made a commitment. And so when you commit yourself to an idea, then you do what is necessary to bring the idea into existence. And if that idea is worth anything, it's going to be very difficult because you're going against the grain. People want you to remain slaves all your life. And so if you're not caught up in chattel slavery, you're basically caught up in intellectual slavery. And Albert Camus, the French writer, said there are two types of intelligence. Intelligent intelligence and stupid intelligence. And so it requires us to fight through ignorance. And what has happened in our community, and in many other communities also, you basically have ignorant people talking how ignorant other people are. So essentially you can't get to the truth. And this is one of the reasons that we highly recommend in our schools to the parents that each home must have a mini learning institution, a library in each home. And that reading must be mandatory. See, if you cannot read, you cannot function in a highly scientific, technological society. And this is why brothers and now too many sisters who are locked up in these prisons, and when they finally get out, cannot read at a 4th or 5th grade level, find themselves going back into the underground economy, because the underground economy feed on the least of us, and they're not reading books. Right? And so you have the underground economy and you have the overground economy. Right? And the overground economy is coming out of Wall Street, coming out of banks, coming out of insurance companies. You know what I mean? They feed on the farmers. You see? And then the people that run the overground economy tell the farmers and tell the workers, especially, and as good unions are coming back, all right, that essentially we're here to take your job, all right, which is not the truth. And so what we have to understand is that people are trying to keep us apart from each other. And they do that by lying on each of us. And so they get in little pockets and start lying to that pocket about what that pocket is supposed to be doing, rather than trying to get us together and trying to see what we're trying to do that's in the best interest of the country. We're not going anywhere. And so it's important for people to understand, essentially, this is our country too. All right? But at the same time, we have to understand that in each culture, people are suffering. They're suffering, you see. And they're hollering at each other. And then you have these, over 400 right-wing radio stations that are hollering and spreading hate. and are not there to essentially, as is Fox and Newsmax, okay? They're not there to bring us together, they're there to split us and start talking about the next civil war. They don't want no war. You see what's happening in Gaza? You see what's happening in Ukraine? They don't want no war here. See, they might think they want a war. Right? But we have to understand, essentially, we cannot let that happen. Okay. And the only way that we can stop that from happening, there has to be communication, sharing, and moving toward an understanding of what is actually happening in the world together. And move from the hate philosophy, dare say, to one of the love philosophy. I'm a Pan-Africanist, but at the same time, I recognize the gospel of Christ. I recognize the special teachings of the Quran, Bhagavad Gita, other spiritual books. But we got to work and talk to each other. If you're not communicating with each other, there's no movement.
Absolutely. And outside of your expertise as an educator and someone who's the founder of these Black institutions, one place that you've been known to have powerful communication is through your involvement or your contribution to the Black arts movement. So so this past month I actually did a couple of workshops at schools talking about the history of the Black arts movement. Not sure if I'm going back to those schools after some of the things, but for those who don't know what the Black arts movement is, because it's one of those things that I didn't really become privy to till about 3-something years ago in my creative journey. So if you could explain what that is to people who don't know what that is, how would you define what the Black arts movement was?
All people create art. All people. And to the degree that their art speaks to not only their own people, but other people, says a lot about them. In 1965, Malcolm X, El Haj Malik Shabazz was assassinated. And for those of us who are trying to find our own voices, and who were trying to sing, and we were part of the street struggle at that time, he was our shining prince. And when Malcolm was hit, we went inside of ourselves and began to really question, why am I a poet? All right. I'm a failed musician. I used to try to play trumpet until I heard Louis Armstrong. Put it down. But what Malcolm forced us to do was to go inside and begin to question, what is our art for? I used to go write about trees, and write about love, and write, what is this poetry for? Okay. And I'll read a couple of poems, I guess, in a minute. And we came up with any people who essentially are trying to find themselves, will see themselves in their creations. And so the Black arts movement are about Black artists going inside and bringing what's inside of them out in poems, in fiction, in visual art, in music, in drama, dance, even in the ministry, Black theology. You may have heard of Brother Cohen. We published him. And so Black art started really as a serious discipline after Malcolm was hit. And we didn't, we feel like, where are we going to go now? So all over the nation at the same time, in pockets in Cleveland, and pockets in Detroit, and Chicago, and New York, and Brooklyn, the West Coast, even Midwest, especially in St. Louis and East St. Louis and so forth, you had theaters and bookstores opening up, and brothers and sisters deciding that we can do this ourselves. Okay. And so, and schools, we started our schools. Our schools come out of the Black Arts Movement. And we're one of the few institutions that's still alive because integration killed a lot of that. And so people felt that, many people felt that when integration came, white people didn't feel that way. But white people closed their schools and opened up Christian schools and other schools to keep black people out. But black art, and when we talk about black, let me be very clear about this. Black is much more than the color. We're not only talking about color, we're talking about culture, and from the culture comes consciousness. All right? So from the culture, you get a sense of identity, you get a sense of purpose, you get a sense of direction from the culture. Any people's culture, that's what you get from the culture. All right? And so, I'm black, but I'm yellow black. You know what I'm saying? That's what I call it, that's why I named the book Yellow Black. Yeah. But my mother didn't get this color because she raped a white man. A white man raped her mama's mama. All right. And she ended up basically selling herself to take care of me and my sister. And I can tell you this now, but she turned a trick and she didn't come home. The man that she went with killed her, murdered her. And I would go out on weekends looking for my mama. I was 14, 15 years old. And I found her. And at that time, I was 6'1", 131 pounds, like a walking skeleton. And didn't nobody fear me. I used to carry a lead pipe in my belt. And what I write about in Yellow Black is how I survived that and how I was able to move on and become the man I am today. And I mentioned those 6 mentors. But my point always, son, is we can do what we work to do. We can do what we study about doing. Yeah. And we can do what we're serious about. So if you're serious about high, you can be high every week. Okay? If you're serious, I mean, all right, I ended up teaching at Columbia College at 28 years old. But I didn't have a graduate degree at 28. I just had an undergraduate degree. So I had to go to the president of the university, of the college actually, Columbia College, and sit with the president and sell myself to him that I knew the subject, which is black literature. And I knew black literature because when I was in the military, I read close to a book a day. And I would write a 250-word essay on each book I read. Now this is between 1960 and 63. And so so very few people were reading black literature in 60, 63. And so when I came out of the military, I just kept on going to college and so forth, and continued to read. And so at that age, when they were looking for black studies and so forth, looking for people to teach, there weren't that many people. You had black people with undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees, not in black literature, not in black studies, okay? So we have to make a way for ourselves. And not make excuses. I think this is the key thing, is that we can do what we work to do.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So the black arts movement grew out of that. And so again, I mentioned the people who mentored me, who gave to me their hearts and souls, their resources. And because of those persons, I dedicated my life to our community. My third book sold 75,000 copies, Don't Cry, Scream. And the reason it sold so many copies, every magazine did a major piece on me. All right? And why did they do a piece on me? I was the first black poet and resident at Cornell University. And so when it hit, Don't Cry Scream jumped on. So that was 1969. In 1970, the book is still selling well. My fourth book is ready to come out. A sister by the name of Paula Gettings. She wrote When and Where I Entered. And she wrote the book on Ida B. Wells, the biography of Ida B. Wells. A major scholar, retired from Smith University. Yeah. She was at that time working at, she was an editor at Random House. And the chief black editor sent her to Chicago to recruit me to leave Broadside Press and come to Random House. And I told Paula Gettings that I'm not going to leave Broadside Press, but I've never been to New York. Bring me to New York and show me Random House. All right, okay. So she did, and she said, I want to bring you to the chief editor here. And that chief editor, when I walked in her office, was Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison had not published The Fool Aside yet. But she was one of the brightest minds and one of the top editors at Random House. And so when I walked in, she said, Don, we're waiting on you, okay? And of course, my response was, I'm not leaving Broadside Press. I appreciate the opportunity. Because it was a major amount of money to come. And I turned it down. And I'll just end with this in terms, I know the time thing is up, but just, as I was turning that down, my cultural mother, Gwendolyn Brooks, was at Harper and Row. She left Harper and Row and came to the same publishing company I was at Broadside Press in 1970. Okay? And never looked back.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. That's inspiring to me, and I hope for everybody else who is able to send that narrative. Thank you. Just because I want to leave more time for the audience to ask questions on that, this last question I want to ask you is more so for my students, like I said, that I brought here, who are growing writers, growing poets, and growing activists, and growing advocates for themselves. I wanted to ask you, for aspiring black poets and writers, why do you believe, and you touched on it a little bit, but if you could expand on it, why do you believe the literary arts are important to pursue for those who aspire to be black poets and writers?
Well, the literary arts are the most democratic of all arts. It's the most democratic of all forms of art. Okay? If you can read and write, you can read and write. You know what I'm saying? You can write poetry, you can write fiction, you should at least attempt to. But the best way to become a writer or to become a poet is to read. As simple as that. Just to read. And I had no idea that all the reading that I was doing in the United States Army would lead to where I'm at today. But even before that, my mother had asked me to go to the Troy Public Library and check out a book titled Black Boy by Richard Wright. I'll show you how backwards I was. I told my mom, I said, I'm not going to the library next, a white library, for a book written by a black man, I think, and he was critical of white America. Why? I hated myself. That's why. I hated myself. And she insisted that I go check out Black Boy. She wanted to read the book. It's one of the top books in the nation at that time. And I went to the library. I didn't go to the white library at the desk. I went to the stacks, found the book on the shelf, pulled the book off the shelf, put it to my chest, and walked to the unpeopled section of the library and sat down and began to read. And for the first time in my 14-year-old life, I was reading literature, not an insult to my own person. I was reading words and sentences and paragraphs about me, about us. I read half the book in the library that day, took it home and finished it in less than 24 hours. Gave it to my mother the next morning, kissed her on the cheek, went back to the library and checked out everything Richard Wright had published. And one of the books that he had published, brothers and sisters, is a book that very few people read. The title of the book is White Man Listen. It's a book of essays. And in that book, there's an essay on black literature. It was called Negro literature at that time. I guess you know what Negroes are. It's filthy and pinchy. All right? And so, as I read that essay, I copied down all the names, and then I began to systematically read all the writers he had referenced in that essay. And so writing is the most democratic of our art forms. And when I say democratic of art forms, I'm very serious about that because this country is moving more and more toward authoritarianism. I mean, we got, you know, we got the former president of the country basically saying, I want to be a dictator. Okay? He's bringing Aubrey over here from Hungary next week or this week. I don't know. That's what I want to be like, all right? We can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. Not bringing him over, but we cannot move toward authoritarianism. We have to keep the country democratic as possible. But it cannot be democratic if we're not talking to each other. You see? If we cannot smile at each other. And we cannot point out these deficiencies in me or whatever the case may be. But we have to move toward building that which is good, just, correct, and right, with a sense of history, humility, and understanding. Okay? And move away from the hate politics and the fear politics. Okay? As long as you're dealing in hate and fear and you represent the enemy, nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. You see? So the Black Arts Movement for me, and I think for the many writers that come out of the Black Arts Movement, it represents a liberated movement. Because it freed us up, it freed this mind up. You see? And I never thought that I would be a university professor, a distinguished university professor, and to marry a woman more distinguished than I am. But she wasn't all that way. My wife came off the west side of Chicago. She grew up in the projects. All right? And she said, I'll never forget it, she said, the reason I ended up at the University of Illinois because, and on scholarship, because I didn't want to end up living where I'm living at now. And the reason I left those boys alone, because I know once I got pregnant, I wasn't going to do anything. Yeah. But I also needed to prove, I'm talking about my wife now, prove to myself that I could compete with anybody. So she had basically scholarship all through her university life. Okay. Then when she got a free ride to the University of Chicago for the PhD, and to do it in 3 years, dissertation in hand. She don't show, I mean, she's serious. Serious as a first love. And that's what all these sisters can do. That's what you can do. All right? And it's important that whatever the challenge is, we can meet it. We can do it. Okay? And I'll just end with, in terms of my remarks, before I take questions. I don't know why Peter Rulick ended up loving black people. I have no idea. I don't know why. It may be because his father was actually a serious minister. Okay? And he devoted his life to teaching young people himself. And then hooked up with me and then hooked me up with Edwin Berry, you know, and this college here. I don't know. But he's a special man. All right? He's a special man. And we gotta acknowledge that. You know. He may be white, but that's all right. But we gotta acknowledge. What questions do you have?
Right here.
Yes.
How do you talk about having conversations with other people. How do you deal with those difficult conversations where you're talking to someone who has ideas that are based on lies and hate, and then trying to show them a different way? How do you deal with that?
You know, that's a very good question. But there is such thing as empirical evidence. There is, that's why these colleges exist. They don't exist to lie. They exist in order to bring us closer to the truth, wherever it may be. I think we have to take each question, and in each question, we look at all sides and try to, and what I will send back to you all, I don't think I brought it with me. Oh, it's a book I'm reading now. It's a little on disinformation, how to fight for truth and protect democracy, Lee McIntyre. And without going through, you know, I mark up all my notes, but without going too deeply into this, he's the one that's saying essentially that you're killing the truth. It's not just telling lies. And part of what has happened to us in this country, we've had a president before Biden, and quiet as a cat. President Biden's done a pretty good job. I think he's making a great mistake in Gaza. But prior to Gaza, bringing these wireless, the whole farming areas, you bring the internet to the farm, fixing bridges, had an answer for the border situation, so Trump told this ignorant ass house educator, I want to use it as a campaign, so we can't fix the border. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's important that, in terms of your question, you confront lies all the time. COVID hurt us a great deal. But it hurt us more than it hurt other technological nations. Because once that president who was under the president of the former president found out that it was affecting black and brown people more than white people, he moved back. And as a result of that, over 500,000 people died needlessly. Because he had basically wiped out everything Obama had brought into the White House in terms of science and so forth, technology. But get back to your general question. It is always what is the question? One. And two, are we listening to each other? And what is your experience? What are you doing? And what has happened, we end up fearing each other so much that we don't hear the question. So we're shouting at each other. And of course now we're allowed to wear our weapons openly. And the weapon is the answer. All too often. But I think that we have to keep on trying. And this is why libraries are so critical. We have in Thorough Press, if you look at the catalog, on that just next to the last page, there is these posters that we're selling. There are 10 posters, and the meaning of reading in their own words. And we got people like Malcolm and Maya Angelou and Gwendolyn Brooks and Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass. You know, Frederick Douglass was a pretty bad brother. You can read his memoir and others. In their own words, these posters, why reading is so important. It's very difficult to speak truth to somebody who don't read. people do not respect knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge. I mean, it's like talking to a damn wall. There's nothing worse than trying to learn from dry paint. But we just got to keep trying. And so even when you're talking to this person or these people, if they're not listening, then it's best to back off. But try to back off without making an enemy. Because these lies have filtered throughout the entire community. And that's why you have these people talking about banning books. You know, how many want to ban a book? Why are you afraid of your children reading books? I don't care what kind of books. And, but we keep on trying. Keep on trying. Yes?
So I've read your poetry and some of your commentary about Gwendolyn Brooks over the years. And there's a feeling, this natural feeling that I get from your speaking about her and how you felt about her. You called her your cultural mother. How did that come about? And can you talk about your relationship with and why Gwendolyn Brooks is so important?
Thanks for asking that question. One of the reasons that she's so important, not only to me, to everybody in this should be in my brain, she's one of the best poets we ever hit the pit. She's one of the best poets ever produced by this country. When she won the Pulitzer Prize, she was the best poet writing in the nation at that time. She was the first black to win the Pulitzer Prize. And so I met Gwendolyn Brooks in a church one Saturday morning. She in a table teaching poetry writing to members of the Blackstone Rangers in Chicago. So I and other poets walked in to introduce ourselves. And we got there early, so we just sat down and respectfully listened to her teaching. You know, these young poets to be. And once she finished, we went up to introduce ourselves. This was 1967. And I was the only one who had published a book at that time. And the interesting thing about my first book title was Think Black. So Think Black was published at the end of 1966. And so you look at a yellow, black, young man talking about Think Black. And so Gwendolyn Brooks looked at the title of the book. I gave her a copy of the book. She looked at the title of the book, and then she put it to her heart and said, "Young man, don't read this tonight." And then that next week we got back together because she had finished the workshop with the Blackstone Rangers, and she moved the workshop to her home on the south side of Chicago and brought all these poets into her home. And we battled every week. But somehow she and I, we gravitated toward each other. And I think that part of it, she had a son, but she and her son were not necessarily that close. He was a former Marine, and he had moved to the East Coast and had married, and they were just not as close as Gwen and her daughter, Nora Brooks Blakely. And so I began to gravitate toward Gwendolyn Brooks, and I would do everything for her that she needed. When I met Gwen, I was 25 and she was 50. And as we continued to develop this familyhood, it was very complex in many cases. But she would help me, and I'll never forget, I got this position at Cornell University, this poet in residence, black poet in residence. I got the position primarily because, I needed 3 letters of recommendation. I got one from Dudley Randall, my publisher, one from Horton W. Fuller, the editor of Black World Magazine, from Gwendolyn Brooks, Pulitzer Prize. But even with those very fine 3 letters of reference, the English department at Cornell University did not want to credit my courses. So I told the students who had basically wanted me to come, I said, I'm not coming. Why would I leave Chicago and go to cold-ass Ithaca, New York to teach a course or courses and not be accredited? That does not make any kind of sense. Right. And so I told them, I'm not coming. So the students went to have a talk with the English department. And so after that talk, I got a quick call from the English department saying, because I'm teaching now at Columbia College in Chicago, would you please, say, professor, now they call me professor, would you please come and I'll sit down and talk to the English department. All right. So I said, of course. So you go into this very room, all these white dead men, pictures. Okay. And then you got 5 of the top English professors, all 4 professors tenured, gonna quiz me on black literature. All right, okay. So I'm coming up there. I got my fatigue military jacket on and blue jeans. So I sat down at the table, they're all around the table. And so they started questioning me about black literature. This is almost funny, man. So one guy comes at, question about, native son, and I answer the question. Then, shadow, invisible man, that was it. That's the question. Then black boy. So I said, okay, I got this. They haven't read anything. Okay. So the next round of questions came, the question may have been about black boy. I answered the question, then I asked the guy the professor who asked me the question, a question about, white man listen, or 8 men. Okay, you couldn't ask a question. Going around, next question, actually a question about, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. And I answered the question and I asked him, I'm saying, well, what about Shadow and That? In his book of essays. Couldn't answer the question. Go around to the next guy. This is the guy just before the chairman of the department, okay? He asked you a question about Savage Holiday, I think it was. And I answered the question, and I asked him a question about Uncle Tom's Children. Right? The guy leaned back and said, yeah, man, you mean Uncle Tom's Cabin? I said, no, I'm not talking about Harry Beecher's Stowe. I'm talking about Richard Wright's book of short stories, Uncle Tom's Children, and I pulled the book out. The guy turned 15 different colors. And by the time, so the next questioner is the chair, and the chair of the department said, welcome to your courses will be accredited. So I became the first black poet in residence at Cornell University in 1969. And so, but again, it gets back to Gwendolyn Brooks. She made that happen along with Hort Fuller and Dudley Randall. But they believed in me. And they believed that I would not embarrass them. Okay. And I love literature so much. I love reading and writing so much that I would continue to improve. And that's what I tried to impart to my students when I was at Cornell. And so we started a Black Studies program, the African Studies program at Cornell in 1970. 69, 70, yeah. And James Turner, who had graduated from Northwestern University to be the first director of African Studies. And James actually, when I stay, I said, I'm not staying with this racist code as far. And then I came back here and I started working at UIC. So University of Illinois Chicago has pretty much just started maybe about a year or 2 years. And then finally I left there because when Don't Cry Scream was published, it received a lot of, and one of the reasons that it received a lot of credit was because Gwendolyn Brooks wrote the introduction to the third book. The first book was Think Black, the second book was Black Pride, which Dudley Randall wrote the introduction to, and then Don't Cry Scream. And as a result of Don't Cry Scream and the recognition I got from Don't Cry Scream, I got a call from a man by the name of Andrew Billingsley. Dr. Andrew Billingsley, look at the name of Andrew Billingsley, one of the major social scientists, but he was the provost at Howard University. So he was calling me, offering me a position at Howard University. And if you read Yellow Black, in Yellow Black, I lie about going to Howard University. I'm selling magazine subscriptions on the road trying to earn a living. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I knock on the door, and this very astute man back in Champaign, Illinois, answered the door, Urbana-Champaign town. Was it? No, Springfield. And I said, sir, I got my one suit on, my new suit, the suit I had for my mother's funeral, and I'm lying about working my way through college and university, and I'm trying to work my way through Howard University. And this was a lawyer, and the brother said, come on in here, young man, I'm a Howard University law school graduate. I didn't go that well. But it did go well. You know why? Because he knew I was lying within 5 minutes. And rather than jump into my chest, he told me, essentially, one thing that no one can take from you is an education. And I said, well, I know that, but I'm out here selling magazine subscriptions with these group of young black men and women with these two adults driving us around because I don't have anything else. And he said, well, but what you may think about are community colleges. Community colleges are for young people who do not have resources and have money and so forth. And once I was 18 at that time. And so I got into East St. Louis. The people I was traveling with left me at the hotel. But before I left his house, this lawyer, black lawyer, bought 4 or 5 subscriptions, asked his wife to feed me, because 6'1", 140 pounds. Gave me something to eat. And I was leaving his house after he had bought subscriptions, gave me something to eat, gave me advice about community colleges. He reached into his wallet and walked into the door. He said, son. He said, son, 3 times. I'm gonna keep walking. He said, young man. Nobody would call me son before, okay? So I turned around. He gave me $20 and folded up in quarters and said, take this $20 and keep it for emergencies. $20 in 1960, that's $100 a day. No one ever gave me anything. And so I used that $20 because I got sick in East St. Louis. I had to use the money to get out of the hotel because the people I was traveling with, they left me. Okay. And I went to the poor man's bank. The poor man's bank is a pawn shop. I pawned I was playing trumpet. I was trying to play trumpet. I had a flugelhorn. I pawned that, and pawned my clothes and everything, and went to to try to join the reserves, United States Army Reserves. And they weren't taking any reserves. They weren't taking what they call regular army. And so I said, okay, I'll try the regular army. I had tried to join the Air Force when I graduated from high school, but I had a heart number. And I knew I had the heart number when I was trying to get into the Army. So when we go for the physical, we had a big auditorium, gym like this. So all these white doctors, I looked for the youngest doctor there. I got into his line, and when he started measuring my heart, he said, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. He said, do some push-ups. I did some push-ups. He measured it. Are you sure? I said, yeah, man, I never been around this many white people. I'm just nervous, man. I got into the Army. So all I'm saying, especially to young people, do not sell yourself short. And to associate yourself with people who are trying to do something other than talk bad about other people.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your questions tonight and for joining us today. I just want to thank Dr. Haki Madhubuti and Aubrey Barnes as well for joining us here today. It's been a wonderful event.
Let me read a poem.
Yes, yeah, please take that.
This is one of my major books, Liberation Narrative. Yes. Everybody has a liberation narrative. You just gotta find it. And this book won a major award also. But I'm gonna read a couple of poems. I don't want to keep it too much. But anyway, this is called Too Late the Truth. Who quieted the fourth estate? Took words, images, and liberating ideas from the recently blind and stole the nation. Why was there not a storm among us confronting the wealth of ignorance? What is the price of deceptive and enriched silence? Who compromised the music of truth, the poetry of deep thought? What of the carpentry of inner peace and community? The people are not derivatives. No little of hedge fund, credit default swaps, or greed passing as compassionate investing. It is the cowards of all professions who sell their children's and elders' futures for the fairy tales of quick, unearned money. We have witnessed superior failure. 8 years of the lowest mediocre denominator, passing as expertise, proven again, it's much easier to believe than think. I'll just read one more. I'll just end with just one last one. It's the title poem of the book, Liberation Narratives. Liberation Narratives. 1. It may be a man's world, yet it's women who write music, who navigate the harmony, who grows children, drives learning, preparing knives for the cutting of green beans and lies, while dodging genocide and rape, as men who run the world, bathed in the power of extreme illusion, overused collateral damage, and deficit language to justify is a man's world. 2, best advice to men, marry women smarter than you. Occasionally let them know it. 3, my mother was prettier than imagination soaked in honey flavored with hot water and lemon. Her heart was there too. She was a short poem. Dead at 34, buried without flowers, notation, or truthful stories. She challenged men walking on her like she was a huge thread mill years before they were invented. I have her eyes. I see damage everywhere. I have become a stop sign. 4, Janet liked girls and told them so. Robert liked boys and kept it a secret. Both grew into teenagers, still liking girls and still liking boys. Each kept their desires to themselves. In the 21st century, parts of the world began to mature and finally understood why Janet loved women and Robert loved men. They were born that way. Enough said. 5. If poetry is to have meaning, it must mean something. More than metaphor and simile, more than tree talk and looking for gigs, more than competition and unrhymed free verse, serious to the bone of incomprehension. Surely to land the poet a Guggenheim or a MacArthur Genius Grant. Artists should not expect from readers, listeners, and observers fairness, objectivity, or deep knowledge of wordplay, or interpretive ideas of paint and jumping notes. Often a smile will do. And yes, to buy and share books, visuals, and music will help. Saying yes to children may get you into heaven. Saying no to war builds character and conscience. Giving 10% of what you earn to the homeless will aid in your sleeping a full night. Hopefully to awaken, creating healthier poems, prose, pictures, and critical perceptions of potential of the letter P beyond potholes, profiteers, poverty, pimp juice, patriots, Protestants, and playboys of the Western world. 6. If you don't know who you are, anybody can name you. And 7, if the world loses elephants, dolphins, polar bears, frogs, trees, the ability of the majority to do good, if the world loses clean water, prayer, and meditation in all languages, if the world loses love across borders, honest vegans and vegetarians, a mother's love, a father's caring, children dancing to knowledge and colors, artists not lying for money, privilege, or fame, if the world loses books, newspapers, clear thinkers, practical doers, poets, promising futures for the great majority, rainforests, a world vocabulary that accents yes and possibilities, rather than knowing you can't do that. If the world loses the great apes, schools, giraffes, salmon, the coral reefs, insects, worms, organic farmers, compost, green tea, workers who use their hands to build and repair stuff, North and South poles, teachers, people of faith, engineers, wheatgrass, carrot juice, oatmeal, and 7-grain bread. If the world loses you and water, yes, precious you and the daily taste of life, it finally means that we've lost butterflies yesterday and failed our children. Let me just say one last thing. I've been plant-based, or what people call vegan, for 55 years. That means for over 55 years, I have not eaten anything other than plant-based food. No beef, no chicken, no eggs, no cheese, no fish. Now my wife does, but not me. And the reason I became plant-based over 55 years ago is because I care about health. At 82, I didn't want anybody to help me up on the stage. I travel by myself, I carry my own books. We have built these institutional structures. We're the only schools in Illinois that our lunches are vegetarian. Okay. So all I'm saying to you young people, and not so young people, move toward life. Don't be afraid to try something new. Do not be afraid of being challenged by others who you do not know. You see. And finally, understand that there is something greater than all of us. I don't know her, and I don't know him. But I have felt the power of her and him. Thanks for coming out today.